Good morning and welcome to the Friday first edition of Netroots Radio, Netroots Nation Live here at Netroots Nation 2019 in Philadelphia. This morning my guest is Tony Donté Prestwood, who is the Chief Executive Officer for
the Prestwood Group, and it's Troy Donté Prestwood.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay.
I've been doing this all weekend.
Oh, my goodness. You guys have been doing a fabulous job.
Thank you. Ooh, I like him. And we're going to hear today to talk about D.C.'s quest for statehood, how long you've been pushing for statehood. Yeah. Where you are right now, I was told that there's some legislation that's going to be happening with some hearings. And before we go into that, Troy, give a bit of background as to the reasoning for Washington, D.C. becoming a state and the issues that are faced by D.C. because it isn't a state.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, thank you so much for having me. So I'm a fourth-generation Washingtonian. Again, my name is Troy Donté Prestwood. I'm a fourth-generation Washingtonian and an elected official out of Washington, D.C. And one of the things that we've always known as residents of the district is that Congress has absolute authority over everything that the local government does. And so while we have limited home rule, we have a mayor, we have a council, we have advisory neighborhood commissions, which I'm one of those commissioners, that help to legislate and to develop policy, sound policy for the residents of the District of Columbia. At the end of the line is Congress, and they actually get to make a final decision as to if any of those policies or legislation, even if it's sound and good policy and legislation, if it actually becomes law. And so what we have been pushing for, and this has gone on for 200 years, 218 years if you listen to our Congresswoman, we've been pushing for full representation in Congress. We are the only capital of the democratic free world, Western world, that disenfranchises its residents. And that is only due to the fact that we have a Congress that won't act. Well, we believe now is the time to act, and we're excited about where we're going in terms of statehood.
Well, wasn't there a time when D.C. almost became part of, was actually part of Arlington or almost part of Virginia? And what the history behind why that never happened?
Yeah, so the Constitution says that there shall be, and I'm paraphrasing, there shall be a capital of the United States to not exceed 10 square miles. And Virginia and Maryland, thankfully, stepped up and said that, we will carve out part of our territory to become part of the new nation's capital. It was initially 10 square miles, it was 100 square miles. But I think that the Constitution says it shall be no more than one of those numbers. But the point that you're making is that at one point we were the perfect diamond. We had Arlington, we had Alexandria, and we, on the Virginia side, and then we had the carve-out that was in Prince George's County on the Maryland side. Well, in around 1840s, Virginia said they wanted their land back because I think the district had just outlawed. Auctioning of slaves. One of the things they had done, and Virginia still wanted to, auction slaves. And so I think there was just this incompatibility between the Virginia and the district's law, and so they decided they wanted retrocession, so they took their land back, essentially. At one point we were bigger, but, that was a very long time ago. I think today we have 702,000 residents who are disenfranchised. And if you're like me, you've always lived in the district, you have been disenfranchised all of your life. And because I'm a fourth generation, that means it goes back 4 generations as well.
And also your Congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton. Did I get her name backwards?
Nope, you got it. That's
awesome.
it. Yep.
Well, she is your Congresswoman. She doesn't really have any power. Or does she? So explain to her, because that's how I perceive. That's my perception. Am I correct in that?
So I think that's the correct perception of it. I would say power is kind of in the eye of the beholder, because she gets a lot done. She's our warrior on Capitol Hill.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. She, literally have to work with her Democratic colleagues from around the country to ensure that, the things that she wants to see done here in the district gets done. But because of her unique position, she also worked with Republican colleagues and those who are of no party affiliation to get those same exact things done. So I would say she has power, but she doesn't have a real vote. So she has nothing to leverage when they all are in those rooms.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, she has nothing to leverage when she's in those rooms, saying, well, I'll vote for this if you vote for that. She has nothing. Like every other state, every other citizen does who has representation in Congress. We don't have that. But in terms of power, man, for not having that leverage, which every congressperson has, she gets it done. Just imagine how much more powerful she could be if she were to have full voting rights, in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah, it's. But you're saying, but hearing how much she is able to get done, she's got the leverage because she can get it done, and that leverage is the respect that they have for her.
I agree with that. Yes.
So the hope is that when you start with your hearings, is that respect for her will carry over into those hearings, and D.C. statehood will be will be given to you.
Yeah. So thank you for mentioning the hearing. So on July 24th, in the Rayburn office building on Capitol Hill, we are having a historic hearing. It's the first opportunity for the public to hear about the Washington, D.C. Admissions Act. And, throughout history, most states have come into the Union through this procedure in Congress. There's another way of doing it, too, but most have come through this procedure. Usually back in the day, it used to be a free state, a slave state. Then it was a southern state, a northern state. So this process isn't unprecedented, but what is the fact that, this is the first time that Washington, D.C. Is just going to be, by itself, asking to become the 51st state. There are 213, at last count, co-sponsors of this bill. So we only need 218 to guarantee passage. And just because we don't have 218 co-sponsors don't mean we don't have the numbers to pass it. And the Congresswoman has been pretty eloquent in saying we know it will pass at the end of the year. So the first part of this is to get through this hearing, to have this airing out of our grievances and what we can do to change the outcome of that. And I'm incredibly excited for the 24th, and so we're asking everyone to come and show up for that. We want to shut down the Capitol, essentially, to show them that we are serious about statehood. And then we know everyone can't be there, so we're asking folks to tell others to use the power of social media to communicate about our plight. They can use 2 hashtags, which are very important. One is very simple, DC Statehood. A lot of conversation is happening there right now on that hashtag. And the second one is Stand Up for DC with the number 4 for DC, where we're seeing just great conversation and dialogue about what does statehood mean, why is it important. You have people telling their stories about why they believe everyone should have this right. Again, I have friends and family members in other parts of the country, and they say, wow, you mean to tell me you don't have full representation in Congress? Like, I'm like, yeah, we really don't, and they too are surprised by that. And I think most Americans are, no matter what your political stripes are. I think for the most part, unless you are, in those hard party lines, you are surprised by that. So I'm hoping that what we're going to see is a bipartisan approach to this. And we certainly know it exists out in the world, where we hope that it shows up in Congress. And so the 24th is our hearing date. And again, to quote the Congresswoman Norton, she said she anticipates that this will pass Congress, or at least the House, by the end of the year.
Well, if it passes the House, what's going to happen in the Senate? Because you know damn well that McConnell is like making sure nothing gets done. And that's, I think, the biggest concern is, and it should be addressed towards, pressuring all people, the senators outside of, to pressure McConnell into bringing it to the floor for a vote.
That's right. So one of the things that your listeners can also do is to reach out to your senators and your congresspeople, but mostly, as you said, those in the Senate. What we know is that, like you said, the majority leader right now, he doesn't support statehood. And so we have to...
He doesn't support anything coming out of the House.
Well, that's true too, right? And so then that leads me to another matter. We need to replace him in the next election in 2020 if he is just going to sit there and stand in the way of everything that could be helpful and beneficial to people of this nation. And so but I think if you have a critical groundswell of senators, especially on the Republican side, because again, I don't believe this doesn't have to be, drawn out by your political orientation. I believe if you are an American and you see you have people who are Americans who do not have a right to vote in their U.S. Congress, you should be outraged, no matter what your stripes are. So my hope is that your listeners can think of who they can reach out to in terms of their senators. Let them know that if they support making D.C. a state, giving us full voting representation, and let them know this is important because we're all Americans and we all should share in the same benefits of being Americans. We pay more federal taxes than many states. We send our sons and daughters off to fight wars that we cannot vote on or declare. And we've been very, very patriotic in this country, but yet we don't have any rights in the U.S. Congress.
And so you are essentially the living embodiment of what one of the things that fomented the American Revolution was taxation without representation.
Exactly. So if you saw some of my friends around the convention center the past few days, you saw us wearing these shirts. Yeah. And so, we embody the taxation without representation. It's the same, battle cry that the founding fathers had when they wanted to, declare their independence from the throne of England. And so here we are some 218 years later, and
there's still a group that does
243 years later, I should say, in terms of the Constitution. We still have a throne. That throne is the U.S. Congress, and we have to, declare our independence from them, and that's why we think this is the first step. And again, back to the Senate. Listen, we will work the Senate. We will continue to work with senators there who want to see this happen, and we will make our case and make our pitch. But most importantly, if we have to basically, clear out the Senate in 2020, that can be the way to do it as well.
That can be arranged.
I think, sometimes you just got to clear out the underbrush.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the majority leader, is is part of that underbrush.
Yeah. Send in the goats to eat the underbrush. Yeah. Reduce that fire hazard. It works.
Yeah,
but yes,
I agree.
you have to get rid of the obstructionists, which in a lot of the legislation, at this point, if McConnell decides to not bring it to the floor, it's just, he's flat out stating his bigotry.
Yeah, and I get it,
And his fear, and the fear.
And the fear, yeah. And the fear is, there's lots of theories about, the fear and why, the senators don't want this to come to the floor. But again, to quote our Congresswoman, she just believes it's because of politics. If you get the district, which is largely progressive and overwhelmingly Democratic, then the outcome is going to be two senators that are of the same persuasion. And so,
and the idea is to make America a one-party state.
Yeah, and we can't allow that to happen. And the truth is, sometimes there are good ideas on both sides, and we need to let those ideas play out. And I think the district should have a seat at the table. When those types of policies come up, and the only way to do that and to guarantee that is to have two U.S. senators from the District of Columbia at that table. So that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're pushing for. And again, on July the 24th, we believe that will be the start of what's to come.
Is there any other way for people to... we've talked about Twitter. I'm pretty sure there's a Facebook.
Yeah. So
and is there an Instagram? Writing letters, emailing our representatives, phone calling politely and respectfully to ask them for support, whether your Congress critter and senators are Republican, Democratic, or independent, to respectfully ask them to support D.C. statehood.
Yes, so all of the above. I can tell you the first way that your viewers and your listeners can engage is to follow us on social. So I'm with an organization called DC Vote.
Yay, DC Vote. I was going to ask you about DC Vote.
Yeah, DC Vote has been around.
You're not using the hashtag?
Those are, no, our hashtags are DC Statehood and Stand Up for DC,
right.
with the number 4. And so you'll see lots of content there from DC Vote on both of those hashtags.
Yeah, awesome.
And again, if you are interested, it is @DC_vote, and that's across all social platforms. You can also go to our website at dcvote.org, where you'll be able to see and learn more about the history of our disenfranchisement, and then also ways that people can get engaged and get involved in the outreach process, because we know this is not going to be a sprint. This is a marathon. And so while we are excited about the 24th of July, where we're going to have this first hearing for the Washington, D.C.
That's simply, the starting gun.
For us, we look at this as the starting point, exactly. We have to get the Senate by any means necessary. And so we will do all we can to work with the current Senate. But if we can't, that means we need to start over, folks, and bring in people who support important values and ideals that you care about. And we know that most of your listeners also care about the disenfranchisement of 700,000 American citizens that live in Washington, D.C.
I don't have anything more to add to that, because that seems to be, the primary thing. 700,000 Americans are disenfranchised.
All because they decided to either be born in Washington, D.C.
or move into D.C.
Washington, D.C. So this is through no fault of our own. This is simply the political will, which we've been lacking for far too long.
And the time is now. So, gotta think if there's anything else I want to talk to you about with DC Vote. Because the times I've been to DC, I've stayed. There's this lovely. I don't know if she's still running the hostel, but she runs a hostel out there, and that's where I stay, because I want to give. Because I want to support the people that live there rather than spend all my money in DuPont, in an overpriced hotel.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it was lovely, because a friend of mine and I were there for the Rally for Sanity.
Okay.
That was awesome, and we couldn't get a cab to get us back to the train station. And she said, "Don't worry about it." Next thing we know, she's pulling up. She also drove a cab.
Yeah.
and she was an immigrant from the Caribbean, and she had been a nurse in the, So I'm all for statehood and supporting the local businesses, because statehood for DC will also improve the economics of DC. And the local businesses of D.C.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something I think is important. Washington, D.C. is home to amazing people. We have, amazing institutions, universities, of which I graduated from two, both Howard University and American University. Shout out to those schools. And the people, to get back to that, the people are resilient. They are and continue to, weather many storms, economic storms, storms around public safety even. And our kids, just inspire me every day because many of them are going to be leaders of our city in the future. And so
they need the franchise.
Exactly. Can you imagine the work we can do today to help our children have a better tomorrow, especially those from Washington, D.C.? Many of them black and brown, but at the same time, the city is diversifying. And so we believe that the way that, we can position the Washington, D.C. as a city of the future is to ensure that it becomes a state where it controls its destiny, where it can, have, again, 2 senators in the Senate, a representative in Congress that can vote, and can weigh in on the issues that matter to all of the wonderful people who call Washington, D.C. home.
It's about equity.
It's about equity, yeah. This is what it's about. At the end of the day, it's about equity. And I can't think of a better way to do that than to ensure that there is equal footing for all of its residents, all American citizens. Again, we're Americans, but we just don't have the full voting rights. And by the way, I want to reiterate, we pay lots of taxes.
It's not a cheap real estate.
It's not. I mean, listen, we love our friends in Puerto Rico and other territories, but they don't pay any federal taxes. We pay quite the Congresswoman says it like this: we pay more federal taxes per capita than any other state in the union. That's got to be worth something. And so what we're asking for is, again, give us the vote, and let's start with this hearing on July 24th.
Is that hearing going to be broadcast live?
We anticipate it will be broadcast. I know that our partners are working with C-SPAN and other broadcast partners there. But even if they don't, we're going to find a way to get the footage out of that hearing room to the public, because this is such a historic day, and we really want to make sure that people tune in, get educated on the issues, and then join us in this fight. Again, we have 2 hashtags where people can rally around: DC Statehood, hashtag DC Statehood, and then the other is hashtag Stand Up for DC, the number 4. People can rally and support us there. Of course, they can get involved. They can come and be a part of the hearing. And then again, like you said, this is just a starting point. So we're going to need more and more people as this marathon goes along, so we can pass the baton to them.
And on that, thank you very much.
Thank you
Troy,
for having me.
It was awesome speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And again, I want to thank my guest, Troy Donté Prestwood of DC Vote and DC Statehood. And you've been listening to Netroots Nation Live here on netrootsradio.com. Thank you.